Episode 13, Tiago Machado Case. Pirassununga, Brazil. The Tiago Machado case became known as one of the most significant cases in Brazilian ufology. On February 6, 1969, in Vila Pinheiro, Pirassununga, Tiago Machado, who was 19 years old and worked as a grapefruit vendor, had an extraordinary experience. Around 7:30 in the morning, he was abruptly awakened by his mother, who insisted that he come and see a flying saucer. Tiago didn't believe in flying saucers, but he got up at his mother's insistence. She told him that she and the neighbors had seen something shiny flying, and that it had landed about 600 meters from their house. Tiago Machado rushed out of his house with binoculars and called several people to accompany him, but they all refused. That's when he called his friend Francisco Hansa, who lived on a farm next to his house, and the two of them ventured into the grass field. As the vegetation was dense, they eventually split up, each searching for the UFO. A group of people positioned above the area they were exploring shouted to guide them to the point where the object was. Suddenly, at a distance of 10 meters, Tiago came face to face with the craft. It was a disc-shaped object made of aluminum with a dome on top, supported by a tripod. From the dome, a window opened, and two crew members floated out towards him, landing on the ground. Inside the craft, there were two more beings observing through a sort of windshield. By his description, they were 1.50 meters tall, wearing tight, aluminum-like suits that covered their bodies from head to toe. Through a visor on their faces, Tiago could see smooth, yellowish skin and a scar on each cheek. Their eyes were dark yellow and misaligned, with no pupils, thin lips, and a flattened nose. Through a tube that protruded from the visor, Tiago heard deep, harsh sounds emitted by the beings in their attempts at communication. The two crew members took 3 steps closer, and Tiago asked them where they came from. One of them made a circle with his arms, rotating his hands up and down. Tiago asked again, and he responded with the same gestures. The crew member continued making sounds, but Tiago couldn't understand. Tiago started to get nervous and instinctively lit a cigarette. When he exhaled the first puff, it caught the attention and interest of the beings, who exchanged glances and said something to each other. In a courteous manner, he tossed the pack to the visitors. To his surprise, one of the beings held his hand a few centimeters above the gift, and it floated up and adhered to his hand. Then he pressed the pack against his leg, and it disappeared mysteriously. The beings then laughed, revealing their blackened teeth, with gaps that fit together. The cosmonauts moved closer to Tiago, and he felt as though they wanted to take him with them. He decided to leave the binoculars he had in the weeds, as evidence of his presence in that location. Startled by his actions, the beings stepped back. At the same time, Francisco Hansa and several people approached, shouting for their friend, throwing objects and making noise. The beings took a small leap, rose into the air, and returned to the flying saucer. One of them remained halfway out of the dome, and held an object in his hand, began to turn a lever, and a beam of light hit Tiago's right leg, immobilizing him. In a matter of seconds, the craft took off and headed towards another location. His friend and other neighbors found Tiago Machado unconscious on the grass. After about an hour, he regained consciousness According to his mother and neighbors, he was dazed, pale, sweating profusely, unable to get up, and desperately asking for water. The Brazilian Air Force was called to the scene and arrived by helicopter. After restricting access to the site, they found the grass burned in a circular shape and marks on the ground caused by the tripod. High levels of radiation were also detected at the site. Tiago, with his right leg paralyzed, was taken to Santa Cosa de Misericordia and later placed under the care of the Brazilian Air Force. For 20 days, he was in the custody of the Air Force, receiving medical care and assistance until he recovered the use of his leg. The evidence left no room for doubt. It was an authentic case of a close encounter of the third kind. According to reports, more than 60 people claim to have seen the object that day.
Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and to turn on the notifications. I will see you on the next episode of UFO Real.